Now, with subtitles and signing, Listening Eye looks at the prospects for sign language in the 1990s.
Well, the prospects for sign language are better now than they have ever been. You see, in the past, as deaf people will know, it was ridiculed and even abused. And now people are changing their whole views about it. What is important is that deaf people don't simply ask for the recognition of sign language, but they demand it, and they keep on demanding it.
Hello, welcome again. We've just seen Jack Ashley MP, an old friend of the deaf community, giving a very hopeful and positive message about the recognition of British Sign Language, the language of the deaf community. More advice from Jack Ashley later. But how realistic is it to say that the prospects for sign language are better now than they have ever been? Well, they must certainly be better than anybody could have predicted or imagined only 10 years ago. In 1981, BATOD, the British Association of Teachers of the Deaf, were just about to officially acknowledge the existence of BSL for the first time. Now, sign language is used to some extent in the education of most profoundly deaf children. Some local authorities have adopted a policy of bilingualism, giving BSL equal status with English and using deaf people as teachers and assistants in deaf education.
Met. Is that right? Met. Yes, you can. Met.
In 1981, the Council for the Advancement of Communication with Deaf People, CACDP or CAP, did not exist. Since then, it has trained 19,000 people in BSL, 587 of them to Stage 3 level, and has registered 76 interpreters. And since it began in 1985, the British Sign Language Tutor Training course at Durham University has trained 140 deaf people to become tutors of British Sign Language.
Right, now these signs, these are compound signs. Remember that. Now, what does that mean? That's when you have one sign, not a word, a sign, and another sign, which, when you put them together, take on a new meaning.
There's no doubt that the research and teaching carried out at university level has given one of the biggest boosts to the advance of BSL. And a vital tool in all that research and teaching is the use of video, which could be the most important single element in establishing our language once and for all on a par with spoken languages. Here, with one of the latest examples of the new video technology, is Rachel Bestiger. She's talking with Linda Day of the Centre for Deaf Studies at Bristol University.
Linda, this is a fascinating toy. I've been learning how it works, and it's great. But it's not a toy, is it?
No, this is very valuable. It's a vital piece of equipment and really important for sign language.
Well, I've just been seeing whether I've mastered some of the marvellous things it can do. For instance, at the moment, the computer's programmed to show a lesson of a deaf person teaching numbers 1 to 20. Let's see. Now, if I ask it, the computer can show me a close-up of any part of the picture so that I can analyse exactly what the teacher is doing until I've mastered it. Let's have a look. Now, by giving the machine another instruction, this small camera here, this camera can be used for people like me or other hearing students to learn sign language and compare it with the teachers until they get it right, as one hearing student has already done. Linda, how can this be used in the teaching and development of sign language?
This is really support for BSL tutors in a teaching situation. Often, if a student is weak and perhaps have failed their assessment because of a particular area, the tutor can send them to the language lab where they can operate the keyboard and learn from the screen. If the tutor says they need to work on their facial expressions, they can watch the screen and concentrate on that. We showed lessons 1 to 20, but really the number part is a very small aspect of it. What's really vital is everyday conversation. The students can just play around with the controls, zoom in on the face, split the screen, find whatever they want. The camera will be facing them, and this is really important because they'll get the feedback. They can key in when they feel they're ready to copy the tutor. They sign into the camera and it will show their image beside the tutor on the screen. They'll be able to compare the tutor with their own handshakes, facial expressions and so on.
Can you tell me who developed this technology?
It was Attica, a private firm from Oxford, in collaboration with Bristol University, and it was jointly funded by the Employment Department together with Attica.
When do you think it'll be available for use?
Trial projects will soon be held in 3 different centres all over the UK, and it will be distributed hopefully by the end of this year.
Well, I bet there are thousands of viewers who just can't wait to get their hands on the equipment. Thank you. Let me have one more go.
That's just the latest use to which the Centre for Deaf Studies is putting video. For years now, the Bristol team has been using it to study the development of sign language in deaf children. And here I've got another example of the very sophisticated things you can do with video and computers. A fast computer can grab frames from a signed video and print them using a laser printer in a sequence of pictures that could become the basis of a written form of BSL. I'll repeat that to give you some idea what I mean. A fast computer can grab frames from a signed video and print them using a laser printer in a sequence of pictures that could become the basis of a written form of BSL.
And those images could be printed in book form as stories or as dictionaries. At the Deaf Studies Research Unit in Durham University, they've been working on the first bilingual BSL English dictionary, which is due to be published early next year. For the first edition, they're using still photographs, but frame grabbing could provide even better results. The production of a proper dictionary is a landmark in the development of any language. This is a facsimile of the most famous dictionary of the English language, produced by Samuel Johnson in 1755. It's regarded as the first proper English dictionary. Let's hope that in 200 years' time, the importance of the BSL dictionary is still recognized too. Certainly, when we're fighting to have our language recognized, a dictionary is a very useful weapon to have in the argument.
A dictionary is a storehouse of language, but it's how the language is used every day that keeps it alive and growing. Deaf groups have been using video more and more as a way of spreading information. Last year, for example, AIDS Ahead made a video to educate the deaf community about how to tackle the problem of AIDS. In recent years, the government and public bodies have recognized that Britain is now a multilingual society. Public information booklets and posters have appeared in a number of different languages. In 1990, when information about the poll tax was being distributed, for the first time the information was also available on a sign language video. And this year, the reforms in the National Health Service are dealt with on a new video, available through the British Deaf Association.
Do you have any that you would like to ask me now?
No, nothing at the moment. Fine, thanks.
Perhaps we should start by taking your blood pressure.
Family doctors will be encouraged to provide health awareness clinics. They may give detailed advice on diet, blood pressure, perhaps giving up smoking, heart disease, diabetes, and alcohol control, and general physical fitness. Good health care is not just given when you're ill. They give you help and advice so that you can continue to stay well and fit.
So, government and other bodies have started to recognise the need to use sign language when communicating with deaf people. But what does that mean with regard to the official recognition of British Sign Language? You may remember some years ago we showed a clip of this momentous event from the European Parliament.
For a resolution as a whole, to the vote, those in favour, those against, abstentions, well, that is clearly carried unanimously by this House.
So in 1988, the European Parliament unanimously recommended that all national sign languages should be recognised. Now, what exactly would that mean? Sweden was the first country to recognise its native sign language officially by law in 1981. This made it easier to argue for improved interpreting services, for example. In 1983, Swedish Sign Language was proclaimed as the language of instruction in Sweden's 5 schools for deaf students. And in 1989, another law was passed requiring all teachers of deaf children to be fluent in sign language. Teachers have 5 years to learn it or be dismissed.
So how many languages at present enjoy official status here in Britain? The demand often made is that BSL should be recognised as Britain's 4th language, after English, Welsh and Gaelic. But in fact, when we asked the Central Office of Information, who made the National Health Service video we saw earlier, they told us that only 1 language has full official recognition in the UK, and that is English.
Welsh is recognised for many purposes in Wales, from its use along with English in road signs to education and employment. But the Welsh Language Act of 1967 left it unequal to English in many respects. So much so that earlier this year the Welsh Language Board published a report which found that
the position today is that in Wales, Welsh-speaking citizens are equal in all respects to English-speaking citizens, provided they exercise their rights in English. After nearly 25 years since the passing of the 1967 Act, the position still is that in Wales, its citizens cannot be born, cannot live, cannot marry, and cannot die in Welsh.
the board recommends that there should be a new Welsh Language Act, giving it full official status and equal validity with English.
In Scotland, the Gaelic language has made a lot of headway in recent years, but in some respects, it is less widely recognised than Welsh. and there are still some influential figures who resist further steps towards recognition. During a recent parliamentary committee meeting, for example, Sir Nicholas Fairbairn had this to say.
No one is more emotional about our culture and its manifestations than I am. Gaelic is one of those manifestations, but it is a dead language. A language for those who can communicate in it between themselves, just as the deaf and dumb communicate with a special language.
So with one statement, Sir Nicholas managed to upset both Gaelic speakers and deaf sign language users. But even without full equality or official recognition, both Gaelic and Welsh have achieved successes that we could emulate. In education, employment, and especially in broadcasting.
Since 1982, Wales has had its own fourth channel, S4C, with an annual budget of £58 million and 30 hours per week of programmes in Welsh.
And just a few months ago, the government announced it would make available £9.5 million a year to increase the amount of Gaelic TV broadcasting to 300 hours per year by 1993. Viewers in Scotland can look forward to a lot more programmes like these.
Hello, agus fáidealamh chuna dhéimetha chula duine clúich bétha seo. Agus seo héin isithaus ceann na cúise, nin.
Fewer than 100,000 people speak Gaelic compared to about 50,000 deaf people who use sign language. If we could get just half the financial support for deaf broadcasting which is given to Gaelic, the number of sign language programs could increase from about 25 hours a year to between 100 and 200 hours a year.
But neither the Welsh nor the Scots could have achieved what they have without political pressure. And so we come back to the political question, where do the parties stand on the recognition of British Sign Language? We wrote to the leaders of all the main political parties. Their replies were not, on the whole, encouraging. For the Conservative Party, Prime Minister John Major's political secretary wrote on his behalf,
"The government does not believe that official recognition in whatever form is appropriate to one form of communication rather than another. This applies not only to certain forms of communication, such as lip reading as compared with sign language, but also differences within sign language, for example, sign-supported English compared with the British Sign Language. It is better to allow hearing-impaired people to select an approach best suited to their own circumstances and needs."
It seems the government needs better information about the difference between a language, BSL, and a form of communication, SSE. The Labour Party sent us this statement from its Policy Directorate.
"We believe that Labour's approach was made clear as long ago as the late 1970s. Our then Minister for the Disabled, Alf Morris, provided funding for the work on a British Sign Language, which was welcomed by the British Deaf Association and other voluntary groups. Labour also led the way in making facilities available for signing at our annual conference. Finally, we have a clear commitment to advancing the rights of people with disabilities, as set out in our policy document, As of Right."
We checked Labour's policy document. It has plenty to say about access, disability, discrimination and so on. but no mention at all of the language question. Somewhat to our surprise, the Liberal Democrats, the Scottish National Party and Plaid Cymru, the Welsh nationalists, acknowledged our letter and said they would contact us again with a fuller reply, but they never did. The only one to give clear and unequivocal support for the recognition of British Sign Language was the leader of the Social Democrats, David Owen, who was also the only party leader to reply in person.
Social Democrats would like to see BSL recognised as an official national language, given that it is used by over 50,000 people in Great Britain. For many deaf people, this is their only language, and recognition as an official language would encourage those involved in education and the media to make greater use of BSL.
So, should we despair that only one of the minority parties would come out in support of official recognition for BSL? For advice, we turn to a Member of Parliament who is standing down at the next general election after a long history of campaigning on behalf of deaf and hard-of-hearing people, Jack Ashley. First, we asked him what chance he thought there was that a British government would recognise British Sign Language before the year 2000.
Well, I think there are strong hopes of sign language being recognised. I think the European Commission's resolution was a very important step forward, but we've got to recognise that there has been no enthusiasm among ministers in the British government. Having said that, things are changing, and the public's perception of British Sign Language and sign language in general is changing and improving. So I think the prospects are better now than they have been, especially in the light of the British Deaf Association's campaign, which was very effective and supported by RNID and other voluntary organisations. So I'm optimistic now about the prospects.
So what political action would he recommend to the deaf community in order to help achieve the recognition of BSL?
Well, all governments in a democracy respond to pressure, public pressure, and that public pressure must be seen through parliamentarians. So the best political action is for all deaf people who support sign language to write to their MPs. Better still, go and see them at the advice bureaus and press the point that they want sign language recognised officially. And I think if that is done, then the political momentum can be generated and increased in Parliament, and that's the best means of deaf people pursuing this objective.
Finally, we asked Mr. Ashley if we could look forward to his continuing involvement in advancing the cause of BSL, even though he is stepping down as an MP. His answer was good news for us all.
Before I leave Parliament, I intend to challenge ministers within the next few weeks to recognise British Sign Language officially. And then I want to ask them to provide the money for interpreters, because money is important. And then after I leave Parliament, of course I will continue to campaign. So whether in or out of Parliament, I'll continue to press the needs for people who need British Sign Language and for a supporting system to help them.
Jack Ashley there, quite unwavering in his support for BSL, in spite of the rather wind-shaken camera overlooking the Houses of Parliament. Sorry for the slight wobble on the picture there.
So remember what Jack Ashley said about pressing your members of Parliament to recognise British Sign Language. If the Welsh, with only 38 MPs, and the Scots, with only 72 MPs, can achieve so much, remember, there are deaf people in every one of the 650 constituencies in the UK. We have 650 MPs.
That's all for this week. But remember, if you want more facts and lots more to think about, why not write for our free booklet? You can see the address at the end of the programme.
Next week, in the last of our present series, we'll be looking at another of the big questions that concerns us all. What kind of TV do deaf people want in the 1990s? We'll have deaf people in the studio from all over Britain, letting us know their views. If you're interested, why not join us then?